Hey everyone, this is MusicTechHelpGuy, and welcome to part 19 of my pop EDM production series in Logic Pro 10. In this video, we're going to finish up the production of the synths and drums in the song and get them to about 90% to the level of where they need to be in comparison to the reference mix. So what we're going to do first is we are going to mute out all of the vocals because I just want to focus on the instruments. And I've also got the Vox intro vocals down here, so I'm going to pull these up by the other vocals and mute those out as well. And I really just want to focus on getting all of the sounds the way they need to sound for all the instruments so we can move on to mixing the vocals and then mixing the instruments in the next video. The only section that we really haven't done a whole lot of work in is the drop section. So there's some things we got to do in the instrument production in that section, but there's a few other tweaks in some of the other sections that I want to do as well. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So the first thing I want to do is the synth riser is just way too loud. I don't like the way it sounds. If you click, I'm just going to click on it, hit U to set the locators, and hit C to turn on cycle mode. Just listen to how loud this is. It's just too loud. Now, normally I'd just pull the volume down, but if we hit A, you'll see that we already put in some volume automation on it. So what I'm going to do is actually go into the ES2 plugin on that instrument, open that up, and actually pull the volume down to about halfway. So it's still very noticeable in the mix, but it's just a lot lower. I'm also going to put an EQ on the end here, a channel EQ. And what we're going to do is pull out a little bit of the low end, just because I feel like there's some low end in there that I just don't want. Let's give that a listen. So yeah, I'm just using the high pass filter around 340 hertz, and that works just fine. The next thing I want to do is I want to take a look at the intro. Let me just go back to the beginning here, zoom in a bit, hit A to pull up automation. Let me zoom in vertically a bit here. And one of the things I want to do in the intro is I want to use region automation to fade in some of these instruments. So on the massive string pad, we're going to make sure region automation is shown. On the Bosendorfer piano, we're going to make sure region automation is shown. On the sub bass as well, we're going to make sure that region automation is shown. And what we're going to do, so let's turn that on, is we're going to click on each one of these to create an initial instance of region automation. And as we lead up to measure 13, we want these to fade in a bit. So I'm just going to create just a very, very subtle sort of volume ramp. So I'm going from like -6 up to -3 for the strings. For the piano, I'm going to go from -0.08, and it's going to start around -3.2. And then for the, this is Bosendorfer piano, that's just the region name, but the actual instrument is sub bass. For this one, I'm actually going to make the endpoint a little bit higher and make the starting point just a touch lower. So we're going from -8 up to about, what was that? -4. The other thing I'm going to do with the piano is in its EQ, its channel EQ plugin, I'm actually going to bring up the high end a bit more because I feel like the piano is not coming through the mix. So not only am I going to raise the gain on the high shelf, I'm also going to pull down the frequency so it encompasses more frequencies. So let's give the intro a quick listen here. Yeah, I feel like the massive string pad is just a touch too loud. We're going to be writing some other automation on here too, so instead of playing with the automation right now, I'm actually going to go into the channel EQ plugin here. Oh, that's right, this has that filter sweep on it, doesn't it? I'm going to grab the gain over here, just pull this down by like 1 dB, maybe a 1.5. We'll do that. It's just a touch too loud. And I'm actually going to raise up the mid-high range a bit. And I know it looks a little weird now, but remember that we have automation on this. So as we go through the song, go through the intro, this is going to slowly open up and we're going to get a little bit more of that upper high range in there. Yeah, I guess we can come down even a little bit more. So I pulled the gain down to -3 in the EQ. It's a little bit too loud. Okay, the next thing I want to take a look at is actually in the drop section. We haven't really done much in the drop section. Let's give that a listen. Okay, one problem is the E snare, the electric snare, is a little too loud. So we're going to pull that down a bit, pull it down to about -12. We are going to add some reverb to that later so it's not so dry. And probably the glaring problem here is that trance lead, it sounds like this. Let me just click on it and hit U to set the cycle range around it, and let's solo that out. That's not anything what it's supposed to sound like. That's more or less just the starting point. Let's apply some sound design to this to make it a lot cooler sounding. So the first thing I'm going to do is add the tremolo plugin to it. So that is under modulation, tremolo. And again, we're going to choose that in stereo. For this, we are going to set the rate to a 16th note. We want sort of a faster value, sort of like a pulsing, stuttering effect almost. I'll keep the depth at 100, but we're going to make the smoothing 20%, around 20%. And I want both channels, both the left and right channels, to be in phase. So I'm going to pull the right channel down to 0%. You can just, or 0 degrees rather. You can double click and just type in whatever value you want. Let's give that a listen now. Cool. I'm sorry if you hear any pops and clicks. It's just, again, like I said in the last couple videos, my video capture software has trouble keeping up when I have a full mix going on. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to add a compressor, because we're actually going to slightly sidechain this as well. So what we're going to do is we are going to sidechain the kick. So under sidechain here, we go up to, or go down to audio 21 kick. Well, just yours might be different depending on where your kick drum is, but we'll just choose kick as our sidechain source. And we want just kind of like a gentle sidechain. We don't want it to be too harsh. So we'll turn off the auto gain. We'll option click on the makeup gain, pull the ratio up a touch, and we'll leave the threshold where it's at. There we go. So I'm going about -27 for the threshold, and about 3:1 ratio for the compression ratio. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add an EQ to this. So we will add the channel EQ. And we're going to scoop out a bunch of the low end. So we're going to turn on our high pass filter here. And we want this to move all the way up to about 500 hertz. So instead of clicking and dragging, I'm just going to double click on 20 hertz here and type in 500. Maybe just slightly less. We don't want this thing fighting with the mid-range and fighting with the bass at all. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add the stereo delay plugin right on it. I know we're breaking some rules here, but when it comes to synth sound design, a lot of times we break a lot of our rules. We're going to put the delay directly on the channel strip. So I'm going to go to delay. I'm going to go over to the stereo delay plugin. And in the stereo delay plugin, we want the left channel to be a quarter note, the right channel to be an eighth note, just like it is. I'm going to pull the filter down just a bit, and then the whole thing's going to come up a bit. Basically, I want to cut out everything above like around 4,000 hertz, but cut out some of the low end. We don't want the bass frequencies in there. Not that there's a whole lot of bass in there anyway, because we kind of already cut that out with the filter earlier, but I'm just going to pull out some of the low end just to be safe. The feedback can stay at 35%. The crossfeed can stay where it's at. The routing can stay where it's at, and the output mix left and right can stay where it's at. So we took basically a very simple idea like this and turned it into this cool delayed pulsing idea that sounds like this. Let's hear it in the mix. This may be a little low, so I may end up pulling this up a bit. Yeah, I ended up pulling it up a bit, just slightly above Unity, which I rarely do, but it's just really low in the mix. I mean, another way around that is we could pull this down and maybe just pull up the volume of the actual ES2 plugin. We could try that as well. So that's another way to do it if you are OCD like me and you hate pulling your faders above Unity. So that's the trance lead synth. A couple other things we want to do is I'm going to hit A here, and in the hook buildup sections here and here, I want to create a sense of, again, it's a buildup. We want it to sort of grow. We want the idea to grow and expand. So what I'm going to do is for the sub bass, actually not the sub bass. The sub bass is going to stay where it's at. For the piano and for the massive leads, we're going to click here, turn on our region automation again, like we did before, and just create a very, very subtle volume ramp in the automation, just enough so we can hear just a slight buildup in the whoops, that's the guitar. That's not what we want right here. A slight buildup in the volume. So on the very last chord in the massive string pad, and then the very last chord in the piano, we're going to create an automation point. So they're at -3 and -0.8. We're just going to pull this down just a touch. So -1.5. We'll go -4.3. So I'll remember that. Let's do that over here as well. Very last chord. Create an automation point. By the way, it's snapping to the grid. I said this earlier, but because our snap mode is on bar, and we have the snap automation turned on, so that's why it's snapping to the bar for me. So this was -4.3. There we go. And this was -1. Was it 1.4? Yeah, 1.5. Okay. So again, just to get into minuscule values, you hold control. It'll move them by smaller values. So let's listen to the hook buildup and then the drop section, just the synths. See if there's anything else we can do to the synths to enhance these two sections. Okay, one thing I did was I pulled down the massive string pad just a little bit more, down to -5. That synth lead pad is a little too loud for my taste now. Let me pull that down a touch. Let's give that another listen. So yeah, for that one I'm hovering at about -5.5. So that's that. Everything sounds good there. I know the verse already sounds good. One of the things I want to do is actually in the drums. Let's take a listen to the drums here. Part of the problem I have is that the snares are very dry, and I really want to hear more high end in the snares. So let's actually do two things. The first thing I want to do is the snares, the electric snare and the claps. So there's two different claps because we split them up. We have claps with pitch, claps, and electric snare. We also actually four of them because there's the acoustic snares, too. I'm gonna drag over all four of those. We're gonna add a send. So I use bus 9. It's not being used. Pull the amount up on those quite a bit. It'll automatically create an aux track for us over here. This is aux 9 here. And this is going to be our snare reverb. So I'm going to call this snare reverb. I'm going to right click on it and choose create track, just because I want it to sort of be up by the other snare tracks. So I'll pull it down here. And let's just solo all of those. I'll solo out the pitch riser too, because it's kind of part of it. And let's give that a listen. And I want to add some reverb to it. So on that snare reverb track, I'm going to add Space Designer. And I want sort of like a long, bright plate. So I'm going to go to large spaces, plate reverbs. Let's try the sustain plate. Let's see what that sounds like. Again, because we're putting reverb on an aux track here, we're keeping the dry signal all the way down, and we can pull up the reverb signal. Wonder if there's anything brighter. Let me go under large spaces, plate reverbs again, and let's choose, not the shimmering plate, that one echoes. Let's try percussion plate. That's too bright. Let me try a medium space instead. Medium plates. Let's try the drum plate. I like the sound of that one. Let me go into the EQ and let me pull out some of the low end. Actually, I'll just turn the filter on and then go up to high pass, and we can high pass it. Yeah, that pulls out a lot of the low frequencies that I don't want in there. Let's listen to that with all the instruments back in. So quick click and swipe down to turn off all these solos. Let's give that a listen. So that sounds good. The next thing I want to do is I kind of want to brighten the high end on all of the drums. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of I'm going to group together all of my drums. The problem here is that some of the snares are going to bus 8 because they're part of that pitch riser that we created. So what I'm going to do is the electric snare and the regular claps, we're going to send the output of those out to a bus. So say bus 10. The clap pitch, pitch riser, and acoustic snare are going to bus 8 already. So what we're going to do is we're going to take bus 8, the pitch riser, we're going to send that out to bus 10 as well. Now I realize that the synth riser is also going to this, but that's okay. It'll actually get a nice boost from what we're going to do with it as well. The filter kick and the kick as well are going to go to bus 10 as well. So all of our drums plus the synth riser are now going to bus 10. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to create an exciter on this. So I'm just going to click on this, and I'm going to call this drum bus. We're going to add an exciter to this to accentuate the harmonic series sort of in the mid-high range. So by itself, this is what it sounds like. And you can also see all together we're clipping. So we need to kind of deal with that as well. So what I'm going to do is click on this on one of these available plugins, and we are going to add the gain plugin. So we're going to go to utility, gain, stereo. And I want to pull the gain down so that we're not clipping. So -4.4 will pull this down below clipping there. Let's try in the hook buildup and see if it clips there. Yeah, it looks like we get a little more wiggle room than that. Let's try -2. Now, normally with third-party plugins, I wouldn't just throw the gain plugin on here and pull the gain down. I would actually go back into the mix and play with some of the other instruments. But in Logic, if an aux channel clips, and as long as you're using certain plugins, like non-analog emulating plugins, if the aux channel is clipping and we pull down the gain plugin on the aux track, it actually recovers the clip safely. If you're using like a third-party plugin that's like an analog emulating plugin, it won't actually do that. So we actually have to worry about truncating our clips accidentally by using those plugins, or intentionally by using those plugins. So what I'm going to do, so we've got to get 2 dB of gain back. The first thing I want to do is actually accentuate some of the high end with the Exciter plugin. So let's go to Specialized and go to Exciter. Now, if you've seen me use the Exciter plugin before, it's essentially a harmonic Exciter plugin or a harmonic enhancer plugin. The third-party equivalent of this that I use a lot is the Vitamin plugin from Waves. So what I'm going to do is dry signal on. Color 1 is the bright color, and that's what we want for drums. Specifically, we're trying to increase the attack of the kick drum just a little bit and increase the high end of the snare a bit. So let's pull this up a bit. So we've pulled that up. Let's look and see how much we're clipping by now, though. And let's see if the riser clips this as well. So we're clipping by 0.2 dB. So let's pull down the gain just a touch more. Let's try like -3. Cool, so we're not clipping anymore, and we've got that high-end brightness, but I think we've probably lost a little bit of overall volume. So what I'm going to do is add the compressor plugin to this. We're going to essentially just bus compress the drums here. So I'm going to use the Studio FET since it's the punchiest one. Turn the limiter on so we don't have to worry about clipping. I'll set the threshold to like -0.1. Let's go ahead and distort this a little bit. Let's go with the soft distortion. And we'll pull the threshold down, pull the ratio up a touch, pull the attack up to let the attack of the notes through. Turn off auto release, pull up the release, because believe it or not, when you pull up the release, it sounds more transient. A lot of people get that confused. Turn off the auto gain and set the makeup to 0. Let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, the attack time's a little too short there. We're cutting off too much of the tail end of that. Let's pull the attack time up a bit. And there you go. With just the compressor, we are sort of getting back that 2 dB or whatever we're losing in gain, and also sort of normalizing the signal. All right, so that's just the drums. Let's give all of that a listen now. Let me go ahead and unsolo that bus. Let's give the hook build up through the drop section one more listen. We'll see if there's anything else in there that we want to change. Okay, so what I'm hearing is a lot of the synthesizers are a little bit too loud in comparison to the drums, and I also feel like I want all the instruments, all the synths, to kind of be a little bit brighter, and I want to more or less glue them together with some compression, much like we did with the drum bus over here. So what I'm going to do is, with all of the instruments that other than the pitch riser that are not drums, so the guitars, the massive pad, the piano, the sculpture, the sub bass, and then all of the other synths over here, retro synth, 80s air pad, trance lead. The verby toms are a drum, but I'm just going to leave those. I'm going to leave all the transitions out of this because they're sort of their own thing. So basically all of the instruments. So both guitars, the massive pad. Let's see if we can see it up here. Yeah, both guitars, the massive pad, the Bosendorfer piano, sculpture nylon plucks, the sub bass pumping, the retro synth, 80s air pad, trance lead. All of those instruments, we're going to send those over to a new bus. But here's the thing. The guitars are already going to bus 7. So we've got to route bus 7 to this same bus. So let's redo that. All 4 of these and all 4 of these. We're going to change their output to bus 11. And then the guitar bus, wherever that is. See if I can find it. The guitar bus is going to go to bus 11 as well. So again, Logic automatically creates an aux track for us over here. This is going to become, I'm just going to call this all synths. I do this a lot in pop and electronic music. All of my synths will go to a single bus. So I can essentially just click on that one bus and I can listen to all of the synths, minus the drums, minus transitions, minus vocals, and process them almost like a little electronic orchestra, almost like a single unit, as opposed to having to process them individually. This also gives us a chance to monitor for anything that might be clipping as well. All right, so one of the things I said is that in comparison to the drums, the synths sound a little loud. So let's turn on our drum bus as well to listen to all the drums. We're going to add the gain plugin to this under Utility, Gain. Let's just try knocking this down by a couple dB, negative 2.4, and let's see how that fares with the drums. Jump before the hook build up here. Yeah, I pulled down the harmonics just a bit on the drum bus. It was just a little too bright for my taste. Let's add the exciter plugin to this as well. This is under Specialized Exciter. We're going to kind of do the same thing here too. Color 1, dry signal on, pull the harmonics up a bit. You can play with the frequency over here as well. I'm going to keep this one more toward the middle. Yeah, I was just playing around with the drum frequency as well. I think I liked it better where it was before. I feel like the low end, the sub bass, the pumping bass, is just it's got a little bit too much high end in it. I can hear sort of the distortion from the synth, the drive from the synth, which sounds good on its own, but I'm gonna pull out the filter on the pumping bass just a touch more to cut out some more of that high end. Yeah, I'll just take it easy a little bit more on the Exciter plugin on the synth bus. So I've got the frequency at 1,000 and the harmonics at about plus 11. So that sounds pretty good. A couple other things we need to do in addition to bussing together our instruments and enhancing them as a group is we need to copy and paste some of these transitions at the very end of the song at measure 127, where the very last piano chord comes in here. We actually need to copy and paste this transition, these like build-up swells, except that the impact snare is not part of it. So I'm going to make sure that snap bar is on, and I'm going to make sure that snap to relative value is on, and I'm going to pull over the reversed piano and both of the crash cymbals. So just hold Option. We'll pull these over all the way to measure 127. Let's give that a listen. Cool. I feel like the guitars are almost too bright now since we included them with all the instruments. Yeah, let's do that. On the guitar bus, the guitar's aux track that we grouped them together on, I'm going to pull the filter way down, like below 2K. And this is more or less because I don't want the guitars to noticeably sound like guitars. I want them to more or less just be like a mid-range thickening idea is really what I want them there for. So let's give this a listen from the intro through the first drop section. And let's see if we're happy with what the production at least sounds like, and then we can fix and play with some of the mix things in the next video. All right, cool. So basically what it is, I tamed down the exciters on my two aux tracks. It sounded good at first, but it was just a bit too bright. So on the instruments, I put it at about plus 0.45, and then on the drums, it's at plus 5.7. So again, you more or less just have to dial this to taste, and some of the brightness and the body on the high mid-range body that we give the song is going to come from mastering, and some of the glue of for the track overall is going to come from what we add to in mastering. So I'm going to tame those down. I'm going to be conservative about the Exciter plugin, but I've got most of the instruments pretty much where I want them to be. So what we'll do in the next video is we will work on mixing in all of the vocals, and then we'll work on doing a final mix of the whole song. And probably within 3 or 4 videos, we'll have the whole mix done and the whole song will be complete, and then we can move on to mastering. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm sorry if it was a little bit more off the cuff and kind of random. A lot of these changes I'm making, I'm literally just using my ears and sort of dialing things to taste. And really, ultimately, your ears are your #1 tool. Remember, if you'd like to work along with me, I'll include a link so you can purchase and download this same multi-track session, and I will include that in the video description below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video.